nobody home. Weep nor drink nor money have I none, yet shall we be merry. Hey ho, nobody home. Weep nor drink nor money have I none, yet shall we be merry. Hey ho, nobody home. Hey ho, nobody home.
This is a story of a season of change for a young girl named Clee. This is a story of a gift that only Clee's grandma could give, a gift of the most precious kind. This is The Winter Gift by Deborah Turney Zagwyn. It was almost Christmas, and Grandma's house was not like Grandma's house at all. Outside, it was the same as ever, same trees, same hillside tucked under the same frozen lake, same chickadees quarreling at the suet feeder. But inside Grandma's house, there was not much to look at. There were 3 empty boxes and a big brown piano with its bench, and that was all. Grandma's house had always been full at Christmas, full of company, rich cooking smells, and lively music. Her tree was put up nice and early so that all the Christmas baubles could be looked at and all the presents could be longed for well ahead of time. Grandma was not one to worry about a few pine needles on her carpet. That is why Clee's family always had Christmas at Grandma's house. But this year, Grandma was moving. She had sold her house and much of her furniture. Clee's parents had driven her recipe books and photo albums and her ailing African violets to a new place on the other side of town. Clee felt like Baby Bear in the story about the 3 bears. Who will dare to eat and sit and sleep in my grandma's house? She fretted. She wished she could scare the new people away and put back Grandma's bowls and chairs and beds.
So now, Clee and her little brother Simon half sat on and half off the piano bench with Grandma. Inside her old house that did not feel like her old house at all. When they spoke, their voices bounced around in this empty living room. "What about the piano?" asked Clee. Simon's fingers plinked a high note. "Icicles," he whispered. "She's a grand oldie," said Grandma. "But she's too wide in the hips for an 8-story apartment. She'll get stuck in the elevator, so she's for sale, and that's why we're waiting." "Waiting?" wondered Clee. She now thought about the new apartment, bulging with Grandma's things. Simon's fist pounded a line of low notes. "Big storm," he shouted. Outside, the snow clouds clenched and the wind ruffled the snowbanks, and a pair of headlights swept into the driveway. Grandma's piano customer, he had arrived. The gentleman grumbled on the porch. He grumbled about the cold. He grumbled about the roads. He grumbled about his truck. And in Grandma's hallway, he trudged off his boots and grumbled about his wet socks. He was still unwrapping himself as he stepped into the living room when he saw the piano, and he stopped mid-grumble. Simon ran his hands up and down the middle keys, up and down, he challenged. Grandma shooed him off the bench. "All mine," he added. Clee watched the gentleman look the piano over. his eyebrows gathered close to his nose, which dripped into his handkerchief. He pressed the keys to see if they bounced back nicely. "Chipped ivory," he muttered, and Grandma flushed.
Simon slithered under the piano bench and pummeled the foot pedals with gusto. The gentleman raised his eyebrows and dug his finger into a scratch in the piano's side. Grandma turned beet red. "I cannot pay much for this piano," the gentleman went on. "It's very old and more than likely won't hold a tune." Simon kicked the soundboards. "It's too upright," groaned the gentleman, "for my bad back and my short box truck." "Upright, upright, uptight, uptight," sang Simon. Grandma tugged Simon out from under the piano bench. Then she sat, smoothed her skirt, and placed her hands on the keys. Beneath her fingers, the chipped ivories played Silent Night, and What Child Is This? And a wild gypsy dance that ducked and twirled like the snowflakes outside the window. Clee felt Simon's hand nuzzling into hers. Grandma's music circled in the room. It filled all the empty corners. It tied Simon to Clee, and Clee to Grandma, and Grandma to her past, with a ribbon of sound. Grandma turned to the gentleman. "This piano is not for sale," she said quietly. The gentleman went into reverse. He grumbled his way back into his wet boots, rewrapped his woolen layers around himself, and retreated up the snowy driveway in his truck.
The house was very quiet. "Where's Simon?" Clee and Grandma asked each other. Outside, the dark pressed against the windows. They looked in bare closets and behind doors, and no Simon. Then a small brushing sound came from the direction of the 3 empty boxes. Grandma put her finger to her mouth and unflipped the flaps of the largest carton. Inside was a flushed and sleeping Simon. On that last night in the old house, Clee and Grandma slept next to Simon in his box. The big brown piano seemed to be sleeping too. Christmas came to Clee's house that year. It was not like Grandma's old house. It did not have a hillside tucked under a frozen lake, but its windows looked out on a snow-covered garden. It had Grandma inside of it, and Clee and Simon and their parents, and the house was full of smells of cooking and Christmas tree branches. On Christmas Eve, Uncle Fish Tank Hal sailed through the doorway on a cloud of snow and steam. "Your ship's come in," he told Grandma. That night, sleep nudged around Clee's bed, but had a hard time finding her. Simon slept, and the sound of his breathing mingled with the whispering of the wind outside, and downstairs her parents and Grandma were laughing. Fish Tank Hal was doing a sailor dance. Clee could hear his feet. Beneath the tree the next morning, everyone found a present. Clee's favorite, a gift from Fish Tank Hal, was nestled in a driftwood box. It was a beautiful shell with a whoosh of the sea inside of it.
In the midst of the unwrapping, Simon discovered one more present off to the side. Unable to fit under the tree, it wore no glossy paper, but its shiny brown paint reflected the Christmas lights, and its almost white teeth stretched into a wide side-to-side smile. Clee lifted Simon onto the bench so he could reach the chipped ivories. Grandma slid in next to them. Together they invented a song about Christmas morning. Simon played the clumps of snow falling off the roof, while Grandma played the emptiness of her old house and the fullness of her new apartment. Simon played the chatter and clatter in the kitchen, while Grandma played a dance that began in the past and moved sweetly into the present. It was a ribbon of sound, a ribbon that rose and fell and filled all the corners of Clee's house.
Hey ho, nobody home, eat nor drink nor money have I none, yet shall we be merry. Hey ho, nobody home, eat nor drink nor money have I none, yet shall we be merry. Hey ho, nobody home. Hey ho, nobody home.
Just like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and hope that you can find those tunes in your hearts and in your house.
Merry Christmas to you all.